Hey guys, this is Mrs. Stifler. So, we're going to talk just a little bit together today about what happens in the United States after Japan attacks Pearl Harbor. Some of the other topics in World War II, I'm able to just post a video and kind of give you some discussion questions, but this is a pretty big section. So, I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking through it with you guys. So, all of the fighting in World War II, aside from the attack at Pearl Harbor, does not happen in the United States. It happens basically in Europe and in Asia. But after the United States is attacked, we start to feel some of the effects here in the States. And some of them are pretty negative. And what you're seeing below this picture that's down here is part of the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C. And each of the 4,048 gold stars represents 100 Americans who died during World War II. So if you're looking at this, you can see a star, a star, a star, a star, and there are 4,048 of these stars times 100 for each American that died. So guys, that's a lot of people. So in addition to different effects that we're going to talk about, a lot of people don't come home from the war. Specifically, more than 10 million men are drafted into the military. And what you're seeing here is a registration card. You had to kind of put like your age and some different contact information. And what happened was they were drafted. And what drafted means is they are selected to serve in the military, and you don't get to say yes or no. If your card is drawn, you go, you fight. And that's how it works. So there were some men who volunteered, and then there were others who were chosen. The nice thing, if you can say there's a nice thing about us entering World War II, is kind of a silver lining, is that the Great Depression finally ends. Roosevelt was on track to end the Great Depression, but it's debatable whether or not it would have ended just with his New Deal programs and all of that. However, when the United States enters the war, it gives the businesses and the economy the boost that's needed to finally put people back to work, finally start making money. And when we enter World War II, Roosevelt asked factories to make ships, make guns, make planes, make all those things that are needed for war. And that is what is the final bump that ends the Great Depression. Car factories are repurposed. Instead of making, Ford cars, they're making tanks, they're making military trucks. Shipyards where there are ships out on a harbor operate 24 hours a day. Our plane industry becomes the biggest in the world, or plane industries in general become the biggest in the world. Pictured below are some of the ships that you would see during World War II. And then over here is kind of one of the more iconic planes that you would see in World War II. Pictured here, you see a lady making ammunition. Basically, this gives the economy such a bump that we create millions of jobs. So all of those people who've been waiting in food lines and waiting in unemployment lines are put back to work. Do we wish it was for a purpose that wasn't going to leave so many dead? Yes. Are people ready to get back to work? Yes. So it's kind of this conflicting time in America where people are excited to be back to work and excited to have money to support their families, but also a little bit hesitant because of what's happening in the world. Specifically during this time, women take kind of a leap forward. And I know I've talked with my class a lot about this, that in wartime, when men would go off to war, whether it was Revolutionary War, Civil War, World War I, it didn't matter, women would step up and fill those jobs. But when men came back, women were sent back to whatever they'd been doing before. However, this is kind of a shift in history, and that when women take over, they don't tend to step back after this. So 350,000 women serve in the military. My grandma was one of them. Guys, this wasn't so long ago that we don't have grandparents and great-grandparents still alive from that time. My grandma served in the Air Force. You can see here, women served as nurses, airplane pilots, radio operators, mechanics. Later, we'll get into code breaking and women who worked in those jobs, really technical fields with the start of computers and things like that. Women really filled a lot of jobs that men were doing, and then also took over jobs at home that men left behind. You hear is pictured women working in factories to make weapons related products and things that are needed for war. This is kind of a iconic or famous image of the time, and this lady on this poster is called Rosie the Riveter. And if you've ever seen this poster, which I'm sure you probably have, it's probably been made into a meme for a million different things, but this is the original. And basically it was showing that women can do it. During World War II, we can do what's needed to help. And I'm going to post, I have a video about it, and I'm going to post that separately so that you guys can watch it if you choose. We won't watch it during this slideshow, but I'll post that for you today. Things that you maybe didn't think about during World War II is entertainment. What about Major League Baseball? Right? So men aren't there to play baseball, so women took over those roles too. And if any of you have seen, and it's a little bit older, but there's a pretty famous movie called A League of Their Own about women playing baseball, and it's just a very real thing. Like every aspect of life goes on pretty much, even though we're fighting in a war. But who's going to fill that void? And women filled the void in a lot of ways. I'll also post this video just talking about women and their contribution during World War II if you're interested in watching it. Not only women had to step up, everyone in the United States had to help, and that included children. So children organized scrap drives to collect tin and aluminum. Over here is a propaganda poster during World War II, and it says, "Your scrap brought it down." And if you look, this is an Axis plane, and it's saying if you collect these scrap pieces, this tin, this aluminum, we're going to use them, and we're going to use them to make weapons. There's a food shortage. So the government calls for something called rationing. And what rationing is it's just a limit on certain types of food. And this actually resonates really close with us right now during this COVID-19 thing going on, because we have a limit on certain types of items. If your parents have talked to you about it at all, if you're putting in orders online for food or different things, you have to have a limit. You can only buy 1 box of toilet paper, 2 boxes of toilet paper, whatever it is. Canned goods and things like that are all limited. And so that's very similar to what was going on in World War II. And then over here again is another propaganda poster. And I've talked a lot about propaganda posters with my class. And basically they're there to convince Americans to do the things that they want them to do. So the government had put out this poster, and it says, "Of course I can." And it shows this lady holding all of these foods that she had canned, which is the play on words, meaning that she had grown these foods in her garden or whatever and canned them so they would last forever. And it says at the bottom, "I'm patriotic as can be, and ration points don't worry me," meaning that the ration stamps given by the government that you could buy certain foods weren't going to be a big deal because, look, I have all this food I've prepared. Victory gardens are planted, and they're just small vegetable gardens. They called them victory gardens so that people would do them, basically, because if you grow this garden and it's called a victory garden, it's going to urge us on to victory, right? So if we grow our own vegetables, I don't need to go to the store to get them, and then more food's available for the rest of the country. So I'm going to have you listen here for just a second to a very short radio clip that was put out on the radio during this time to advertise people doing victory gardens.
You can have vegetables, lots of them, on your table next winter. You can have your own fresh vegetables on your table this summer if you have your own victory garden. Yes, there's no restriction on home canning and home processing of vegetables and garden fruits and berries. Plan your victory garden now. Get your garden plot lined up. Get the advice of a garden expert.
So anyway, that's just a little bit about that. They, using the word victory over and over and over, people are like, oh, obviously, if I grow a victory garden, we're going to win the war. And did it help? Yes. Did growing victory gardens directly to lead to us winning the war? No. But that's the kind of propaganda that was used during the time. Another group that had some new opportunities were African Americans. During this time, we have the Tuskegee Airmen, which are a completely just amazing and famous group of African American pilots that flew combat missions. And we have a video about them here, which I will also post if you're interested. So hopefully you enjoyed learning about a little bit about how the war impacted the citizens of the United States at home. And hope you enjoy the videos.